so students, this is the second video for chapter 1. Okay, so in the previous video, we learned how to completing the square for a quadratic equation, right, or quadratic expression. So please take note that the completing square is a very important technique in A-level syllabus, right? So please make sure you are very clear on how to completing a square. Okay, and then almost every year, this technique will be asked in the exam. So make sure that you know how to completing a square. So now we come to the second part of quadratic equation or quadratic expression. We are going to learn how to solve the quadratic equation. I think this one you also learned it before, just that maybe you just go through it quickly so that you recall back what have you learned before. So the very first is factorization. Only for certain quadratic equation that can be factorized. Okay, not every quadratic equation can be factorized. So there are some quadratic equation only that can be factorized. So what is the meaning of factorized? Generally, you are actually putting it into two smaller brackets with each with x. All right, and after that you solve it when you let it equals to 0, and therefore the first bracket equals to 0. All right, from here you will get x minus 4, first bracket equals to 0, and also x minus 2 equals to 0. And if you continue further, you will get x equals to 4 and also x equals to 2. All right, so the x minus 4 and also x minus 2, these two brackets, we call them x factors. Okay, so please make sure that you know this word, because sometimes in the questions you will see that they want you to find the factors. All right, so this is your factors. Then after that, when they are talking about roots or solution or the value of x, so x equals to 4 and x equals to 2 are roots. Alright, so these two words are very important. So please make sure you know the difference between them, especially factors. A lot of students, they actually don't know what is factor. Okay, so the bracket itself, this whole bracket we call as factor. Okay, so for factorization method, right, to factorize it, generally you need to practice a lot and to learn some technique. Now, I'm not going to show you the technique here. I assume that all of you already know. For those who don't know how to factorize it correctly, you can refer to the videos that I put inside the folder of chapter 1 in the Blackboard. Okay, there are a lot of different methods, and then you can refer to them, and then you see which one is better for you to understand. It's easier for you to understand, then you learn it up. And again, by watching the video once, you're not able to factorize it very well when you have to practice a lot. Okay, so for maths subject, please don't hope for miracle. That means, once I look at the solution, once I look at the video, then I can get the answer and I know how to do it. No, you have to practice. All right, so after you view the video for factorization, if let's say you find this method is useful for you, then you can learn it up. But to learn it up and to make sure that you really, you really manage the knowledge that you already learned, you have to really practice all the questions or try a lot of questions, okay, before you can manage to learn out or manage to understand a certain concept or techniques. Okay, so I'm not going to discuss it here. So if you are interested, you can go and have a look for the video that I put inside the chapter 1 folder. Okay, all right, so the first method is factorization, and there are common mistakes that usually I will see, okay, in exam that the student did one. Right, so you can have a look here. So for common mistake, okay, we have a look for correct solution first. So for correct solution, if you want to factorize it and you separate the bracket, right? Okay, as an example, if you're having negative 8, you actually have to move everything over, become 0 first. This is a must. When you want to factorize and solve the equation, it must be always equals to 0. Then after you factorize it, only you can separate it, become 2 bracket, which is equals to 0. Okay, so only 0 are allowed. And usually the wrong equation or wrong solution is what? Okay, when you're having this expression, right, the students will factorize it and they let x equals to negative 8 on the right, and also x minus 6 equals to negative 8 on the right. This is wrong. Okay, so only 0 are allowed if you want to separate it like this. Okay or not? Alright. Then for the second part also the same thing. If you have a look here, then generally what you have is you change it become x equals to 0, and then x minus 5 equals to 0, and therefore you'll get 2 answers. Okay, so you should have 2 answers. That means x equals to 0 is also one of the answer. X equals to 5 is also one of the answer. There are two answers here. Okay, so common mistake that student will do in the exam is after they didn't factorize it. When they look at this equation, right, it's very simplified. Okay, or cancel off the x, and eventually you have only one value, which is wrong because suppose you should have two values. So when you want to find the correct equation, right, correct answer for the quadratic equation, always remember you can only cancel off the number, but you cannot cancel off the variable, that means the x or the unknown. Cannot. Remember that. Alright, because when you cancel off the unknown or variable, that means you actually cancel off one answer. So this is one of the example. They cancel off the x, right? So cannot do that, right? Okay, so this is just to remind you what are the common mistakes that usually students will do in the exam. Yeah. Alright, so here I think I put a note here. Dividing an equation by a numerical common factor is correct. So you can divide it by number, but you divide a common factor containing the unknown quantity, you will lose the solution. So that's why some students say, why I cannot get the x equals to 0 because you actually cancel x or simplify the x. You cannot do that. You have to factorize, right? So the second method is completing the square. And the third method will be using the quadratic formula. Usually for these three methods, which is the easiest one? Factorize. Okay, so to me, right, my priority, the first one is factorize. If let's say you are very well in factorization, then the first method is factorize. Then the second method is using the quadratic formula. And the third one only comes to completing the square. So completing the square will be the very last choice for you. Alright, so this is my priority. So if can, I will strongly encourage you to learn out the method for factorization. Okay, right, so let's have a look for the example here. Okay, maybe for this one, okay, for part number 5, for this number 5, note number 5, here I actually teach you you can double check the answer by using calculator, but you cannot solve the equation just by using calculator. So in the exam, they will actually look for your steps. Alright, they will actually look for your steps and also to see whether you write out the step properly or not. If let's say you didn't write out the step properly, you should already get the answer by using calculator, you will lose the answer, the method mark. Alright, so please remember that. Okay, so let's have a look for example 3. Okay, so there are two equations here, part A and part B. I will show you the solution for part A only, and then you try the part B yourself. Okay, and then for part A, I'm going to use all the three methods to solve it. So for part B also, I think if let's say you want to make sure that you understand all the methods, right, please use all the three methods to solve it as well. Okay, all right, so let us start with the first method. So the first method is factorization. Okay, so for first method, this is factorization. Okay, so for factorization, this question is very easy. What I'm going to do is 2x squared minus 4x equals to 0. And I can actually factorize out the 2x. So when I factorize out the 2x, I'm having x minus 2 in the bracket itself. And I let it equals to 0. And my right hand side is equal to 0 already. Therefore, I can separate it, become two brackets equal to 0. You can assume that this is one bracket. So 2x equals to 0, x minus 2 equals to 0. And therefore, your x equals to 0, x equals to 2. So this is the first method. Not hard. Okay, I think it's very simple. Of course, the part B will be slightly harder, but you can try it out on your own. Okay, then now we continue to part number 2. The method number 2. Method number 2 is completing square. Alright, so what is the completing square here? How can we do it? Okay, so again, you're having 2x squared minus 4x equals to 0. Okay, so we learned completing square before, right? You can factorize out the 2 if you want. And then after that, what you do is you will get x squared minus 2x. Okay, so after I factorize it out, then I can actually completing the square. So it will be plus something square minus something square. Okay, and then you let it equals to 0. Okay, so what's the something here that you should put in? So you look at the b. b is negative 2, right? So negative 2 divided by 2, you get negative 1. So this is negative 1 also. Alright, then after that, you combine the first three terms, become a bracket. So the first three terms here is what? Is actually x minus 1 square. Okay, then you copy the minus, negative 1 square, you get a positive 1, and that equals to 0. Okay, so after you're completing square already, now you start to solve the equation. So 2, when you move it over, it becomes 0, 0 divided by 2. So you still have x minus 1 square minus 1 equals to 0. Then you move the 1 over, alright, and then you take square root. When you want to take square root, it will become plus minus square root 1. Alright, and after that, what do you get? So plus minus square root 1 means that you are having x minus 1 equals to positive 1. Another one is x minus 1 equals to negative 1. So if you continue from here, you'll see that your solution is 2 and also 0. Alright, so do you get the same answer as the part 1, the first method, factorization? They are the same, right? But you can see that this completing square method, it is longer, much more longer. That's the first thing. And that you will see that you need to be very careful, because if you completely the square wrongly, right, then your answer will be wrong. Understand or not? So that's why you can see that, okay, that is the reason why I ask the students to put this as a last priority. Okay, all right. Anna? Okay, so you can try to learn up the factorization method if possible. All right, then now let's continue with the third method. So the third method is what? It's the quadratic formula. Okay, so for quadratic formula, generally, it's very easy. Okay, and it can be applied for all types of quadratic equation. Right, so but before that, you need to know, okay, so in the quadratic formula got A, B, and C, so you should know that A equals to 2, and then B is the coefficient for x, so which is negative 4, and for this case, C is the constant term, so it should be equal to 0. Alright, so once you know A, B, and C, then you can just apply the formula x equals to negative B. So negative B plus minus square root B squared is negative 4 squared minus 4AC, and divided by 2A. Then you just try to simplify the answer. So you're having 4 plus minus square root. Negative 4 squared is a 16 divided by 4. And after that, you have 4 plus minus square root 16. What do you get? You get a 4, right? So it is equals to plus minus 4 divided by 4. Okay, so 4 plus minus 4 means what? You're having two answers here. One is 4 plus 4 divided by 4. Another one is 4 minus 4 divided by 4. Okay, so eventually what is the answer that you get it? Again, you'll get two answers, x equals to 2 and also x equals to 0. So you can see that actually all the three methods here will give you the same answer if you didn't do any careless mistake. Okay, so for me, my preference is still the factorization because it is shortest. Of course, I still prefer the first one. The quadratic formula actually is quite straightforward also. So if let's say you don't know how to do factorization, then you can use the quadratic formula. Alright, okay. Then after that, the third method is the completing square, the last one, because completing square itself is a process that you need to make sure that it is correct. Okay, then what else? So if let's say you do color mistake here, that means definitely your final answer will be wrong if let's say you don't know really how to do the completing square. So this is always the last priority. Okay, so there are three methods here. In an exam, you can use any method that you like to answer the question. They will not request like a particular method for you to solve that you need to use to solve it. Okay, all right. So this is part A answer, right? So for part B, I want you to use all the three methods to try and to solve it. The answer for part B should be x equals to half and also x equals to negative 1. Okay, so this is the answer you should get. If you again cannot get an answer, please message me through Facebook Messenger, and I will try to figure out where is our mistake and also to show you how to solve it. Alright, so this is what we have for this video. So we are going to discuss in the next video how to identify or maybe to write out the vertex, okay, for a quadratic expression. Right, so that's all for this video. Okay.